Hi guys, I'm Tammy, 36, female. I remember the day we moved to America, fresh off the boat, so to speak. I was just 19, wide-eyed and full of dreams. But it was Stella and Vito, our Italian neighbors, who really made us feel at home. They were like a second family to us, always there with a warm meal or a helping hand. And Vito, he was my partner in crime from the start. Growing up, I admired Stella, a single woman who worked tirelessly to ensure Vito had the best shot at success. I guess you could say we grew up together. Vito and I hung out in the same streets, went to the same school, and our families intertwined seamlessly. It was only natural that as we got older, Vito and I started seeing each other in a different light. We fell in love, and our families couldn't have been happier. It was like a fairy tale. I was 23 when we tied the knot, and we were ready to build a life together. Our families pitched in, helping us set up our first apartment. Everything was perfect. Or at least, that's what we thought. Then came the tragic news. Vito's father had passed away. It hit him hard, and I watched as the weight of grief settled on his shoulders. We were just starting our journey, and life threw us a curveball. Vito's father had never been a part of his life, at least not in the way any kid would wish for. It was like his dad had checked out long before we met. Even with Stella by his side, Vito held this resentment deep within him. The why and the how of his dad leaving him were questions that haunted him. Stella, in her moments of vulnerability, would share stories of an abusive, troubled man. Vito's father, drinking, drugs, and financial ruin seemed to be the common threads in these stories. But for Vito, the image of his father was tangled in a web of conflicted emotions. Despite everything, he longed for a connection, a hero to emerge from the ruins. And then the news of Vito Sr.'s passing hit us like a tidal wave. I could see it, the grief, the confusion, the pain, all swirling in Vito's eyes. He had lost a man he barely knew, yet one he desperately wanted to understand and love. In that moment, I had to step up and be the anchor to weather the storm of emotions that threatened to consume him. I became his sounding board, listening to the stories he dared not share with anyone else. The conflicting feelings of loss and relief mingled within him. I held him tight, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this, that he had a family, a real one, right there. As Vito fought with the weight of his father's passing, I knew he needed to find his own way to heal. He sought solace in the bottom of a bottle, and initially I let him be. I figured he needed time to drown his sorrows, and who was I to dictate the pace of his recovery? Everybody needed a little liquid courage every now and then, right? Unfortunately, the smell of alcohol became a familiar presence in his breath, and for a while I turned a blind eye. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, it became apparent that things were spiraling out of control. There were nights when he didn't come home at all, and that was when I knew I had to step in. Putting my foot down, I decided it was time for an intervention. I invited Stella to join us. After all, she had weathered the storm of Vito Sr.'s turbulent existence longer than any of us. The three of us sat in the living room, the air tense with unspoken words and the lingering scent of concern. I spoke from the heart, expressing my worries and fears about Vito's well-being. Stella, too, chimed in with the perspective of a mother who had witnessed her son's struggle with his father throughout the years. We weren't here to judge or condemn. We were here to offer support, to help Vito find healthier ways to cope. Oh, come on, what the hell is this? Vito, we need to talk. This can't go on. Your wife and I are worried about you, Vito. You can't keep going down this path. What path, huh? It's my life, not yours. Vito, we love you, but you can't keep drowning your pain like this. It's tearing you apart. Your father's gone, and I know it hurts, but this This isn't the answer. I don't need a lecture from you two. I can handle my own problems. I'm a grown man. Vito, you're not handling anything. You're disappearing into this bottle, and we can't stand by and watch it happen. We want to help you heal, son, but you have to let us in. I don't need your help. I don't need anyone. Just leave me alone. Vito, please just talk to us. We're not against you. We're on your side. We're your family, Vito. Let us help you. We tried pleading and begging some more, but he just shouted, I said, leave me alone. Life, after the failed intervention, became a blur of broken promises and shattered dreams. It seemed like the more I tried to reach out to Vito, the more he slipped away. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. Watching it crumble before my eyes, Stella and I became each other's confidants. Sharing our fears and frustrations over the phone, we'd console each other, trying to make sense of the chaos Vito had unleashed upon our lives. But deep down, we both knew we were powerless against the grip of his addiction. Nights turned into a twisted routine. When Vito wouldn't stumble through our front door, he'd stay at Stella's place, his old home, taking advantage of the key he never returned. Each morning, I'd wake up to an empty bed, wondering if this was the day he'd finally come to his senses. The strain on our relationship was undeniable. The man I married, the one who held so much promise and potential, was slipping away. The romanticized image of us growing old together had faded into the harsh reality of dealing with a husband who had succumbed to his demons. And I was getting fed up with it all. One night, after yet another round of senseless arguments, Vito slurred out what he thought was a brilliant idea. A scheme, a plan to turn everything around. But by then, my patience had worn thin, and I couldn't bring myself to entertain his intoxicated fantasies. I longed for the man I fell in love with, not this distorted version fueled by addiction. I remember that night like it was yesterday. Vito stumbled into the room reeking of alcohol and desperation. His eyes held a wild, feverish glint as he cornered me, his words slurred, yet strangely intense. Listen, Tammy, we gotta have a baby. A baby? Vito, you're not in any condition to... But he cut me off, his voice growing louder and more aggressive. No, Tammy, you don't get it. Having a baby, that's how you leave your mark on the world. It's how you show everyone you've accomplished something. I need that. I need to leave something behind. I shook my head, a pit forming in my stomach. Vito, you're not thinking straight. Bringing a child into this mess isn't a solution. We need to fix our lives first. I know you're still hurting from your dad's death. I don't care. I want this, and you should too. In that moment, I realized I needed a strategy, a way to get through to him without escalating the situation. I took a deep breath and said, Vito, I'll only consider having kids with you if you clean up your act. I won't bring a baby into a messed up family dynamic. You need to get your crap together. I hate what your father did to you and your mom, and I'll be damned if I let it happen again. For a moment, conflicting emotions flashed across his face. He seemed torn between the desire for a family and the acknowledgement that his life was spiraling out of control. Finally, he sighed, a defeated look in his eyes. Fine, Tammy, I'll do it. I'll clean up and get my act together. We'll have a kid, and everything will be perfect. You'll see, everything is going to work out just fine. After Vito blurted out that he wanted a baby, I spilled the beans to Stella about everything that had happened the morning after. She wasn't sure it would work, but kept her fingers crossed, hoping it would help Vito get his act together. Vito gave it a shot, trying to turn things around, but the same old cycle of quitting booze and then going back to it haunted him for 3 whole years. It took a toll on us, and I started to wonder if it was even worth holding on to a future that looked less likely each day. When I brought up the idea of leaving, Vito, maybe feeling desperate, made a big promise. He swore off alcohol for good, saying things would be different from this time. I was skeptical, of course, given the past 3 years of broken promises, but surprisingly, Vito stuck to his word and managed 2 years of sobriety. I was 30 at the time we were celebrating his sobriety, and that's when I told him I had the perfect gift for him. I revealed that I was pregnant, telling him that I had stopped taking my birth control a couple of months before so that this would happen. There were mixed emotions, but Vito's happiness overshadowed any doubts. He pledged to be the best dad ever, better than his father, and for the first time in a while, a happy family seemed like it could be a reality. After a smooth and peaceful 9 months, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Kerry. Life seemed perfect for us and our little family, and things were going well between us all. I had a beautiful life, a beautiful daughter. Perhaps I took it for granted at some point because everything went to shit when Kerry hit the ripe age of 3. Around this time, Vito started acting all kinds of strange. He'd stroll in looking dodgy, and I couldn't help but wonder if he was up to some cheating or worse, a relapse. Sadly, my suspicions weren't misplaced. Turns out Vito slipped up one night during an office party and started on the alcohol again. He revealed this to me when I caught him one night sneaking in at 3 a.m. smelling like some cheap liqueur. I was disgusted. I didn't want this crap in my house, and I was this close to kicking him out because, like I said all those years ago, I wouldn't allow that nonsense in my child's life. I tried not to explode in anger, wanting to acknowledge the progress he'd made, but frustration got the better of me. I hoped that the battle with alcoholism was behind us for good, so I wanted to hear him out and see what triggered him to mess up so badly once again. Babe, I know how hard you've been trying, and I don't take the past couple of years of our lives in vain. It's been very good for us, so please tell me what the hell you think you're doing. Don't you know you've got a good thing going on? Yeah, Tammy, I know. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I think you do know what happened, and I'm not here to judge you. Just talk to me. Hello? Are you even listening to me? Don't piss me off, Vito. I'm being very patient with you, even though I should kick you out of this house for breaking your promise. Even though I was trying to get through to him, he just seemed very finicky, like my words were going in one ear and coming out the other. My frustration burst into a yelling match. I demanded answers, questioning why he insisted on wrecking our lives. Vito looked more anxious than usual, and finally let slip something that made me want to smack the snot out of him. Vito, what the heck is your problem? You've been acting so weird lately, weirder than usual. No, Tammy, it's not like that. Well, what is it then? Spit it out. I'm in some serious trouble, Tammy. I got into it with some shady guys. If I don't pay back these guys, things are going to get really bad. I was beyond furious, screaming, cursing at Vito for the colossal mess he had gotten us into. He was lucky that little Kerry was peacefully sleeping in her room, or our home might have transformed into a bloody crime scene. I demanded he spill everything, leaving nothing hidden. Vito reluctantly began to reveal the disgusting details of his situation. It started with harmless bets among friends, but soon spiraled into a full-blown gambling addiction. Perfect. On top of battling alcoholism, he's now a gambler. Just great. Anyways, he kept losing money, spiraling further into debt. Debt that I had no clue about until the moment, mind you. Vito confessed to borrowing money from some shady guys, assuring them that he would repay every cent and more. However, his losing streak persisted, and the shady guys grew impatient. Their threats escalated, vowing to visit our home and resort to violence if Vito didn't settle the debt. The rage within me reached new heights. I couldn't fathom how he'd let things escalate to this point. The safety of our family was now at stake because of his reckless choices, and I was done. And then in the midst of my anger, Vito had what he considered a brilliant idea. "But babe, I have a solution to all of this." "What solution? Unless 35 grand is going to fall from the sky, I don't see us getting out of this. You've seen how beautiful Carrie is. What if we put her in those pageant shows? She's going to be a guaranteed winner. I mean, just look at that face. And they're paying these kids a buttload of money, babe. I swear this is going to work." "No way, Vito. I won't let you exploit our daughter like that. Those pageants are toxic, feeding into this messed up beauty industry. I won't have Carrie paraded around like a doll for a bunch of perverts. And even if it wasn't so toxic, I wouldn't let you bring her into your mess." "But I'm serious, Vito. You got another thing coming if you think you're putting her in that pageant." "Babe, just listen. If you ever bring up something like that again, I swear I'll rip your ears off. You hear me?" After the argument, Vito sulkily left, seemingly offended that I didn't endorse his reckless plan. He really must be an idiot if he thought that I would say yes. When he slammed the door and left, I was left alone with my thoughts, thinking about the gravity of the situation. It became clear to me that I needed to put as much distance as possible between us. The next morning, bright and early, I hastily packed essentials for Carrie and myself. We went to my parents' house, seeking peace from the chaos that had threatened our lives. Vito returned home late that night, only to find our absence. I knew this because he left a crap ton of frantic calls demanding answers about where we were and how we could leave him. During our heated phone conversation, I dropped the bombshell. I wanted a divorce. The chaos and danger that Vito had introduced into our lives were too much for me to bear. I knew both Carrie and I deserved better. Amidst the heated exchange, Vito broke down, his sobs audible over the phone. Despite the emotional commotion, he agreed to the divorce, claiming he would do anything to make me happy. Thank God, Vito was actually very compliant with the clauses of the divorce. I said I wanted full custody of Carrie and that I didn't care much about settlements or hefty alimony. I just wanted to get away from that man before the crap hit the fan, you know. By the end of that same year, we were officially done. As you can imagine, this put a serious strain on my relationship with Stella. She understood my side of things, but of course, her loyalty was still with her son, so talking and hanging out was put at a halt. I was very sad for Carrie. She barely understood what was going on, but losing her father and her grandma so soon must have been hard for her. I'm hoping that when she's older she'll understand where I was coming from, and that I did everything to protect her. So 3 more years rolled by and Carrie hit the big 6. I managed to build a life for myself without Vito, chilling in a nice little apartment with my baby girl. Things were going smoothly, and I really didn't want to hear from Vito or know what he was up to after that whole mess with owing money to people. I was just living a peaceful life, focused on taking care of my daughter. Then out of the blue one night there was a knock on my door, and when I swung it open, there's Stella, looking all helpless and worn out, like, what on earth is going on now? Stella, what are you doing here? Look, there isn't much time. How did you get my address? I got it from your parents, Tammy. Look, Vito isn't doing well. Oh, tell me about it. I know, Stella. No, like he really isn't doing well. Ever since the divorce, he's been a complete wreck. Nobody can get through to him. He keeps moaning and groaning that he's saying that the only solution is if he can see his daughter at least one last time. I don't know, Stella. I still have a lot of love for you, you know that, but I can't put Carrie in danger like that. Please, Tammy, I'm begging you. I've tried everything. Why do you think I haven't contacted you in so long? Do you think I want to be here? I wish I could find any other way, but this is the only solution. I then turned to see Kerry, who was off in the distance, watching TV innocently. "This is the only thing that will save him, Tammy. Seeing his daughter, please, you have to let me take her." After seeing her crying and thinking about it for a while, I caved into Stella's plea to take Kerry to see Vito. I figured with Stella there, everything would be fine and she could handle her and that Vito wouldn't harm my baby. Stella and I agreed that Kerry would sleep over for 2 nights, and if all went well, I might reconsider shared custody. Stella was super thankful and I went to pack a bag for Kerry, sending her off with Grandma Stella. 2 nights came and went and I was expecting Kerry and Stella to come home. But it was getting late. I kept calling Stella to see what was up. Eventually she answered, saying that Kerry wanted to stay an extra night. When I asked to talk to Kerry, Stella said she was sleeping and that they'd chat in the morning. I was a little suspicious, but I chalked it up to typical motherly paranoia, so I didn't want to go off the deep end and go ballistic on them. I mean, 3 years had passed, so it was only normal for them to want to spend as much time with Kerry. So I agreed for Kerry to come in the morning. But, just like the day before, Stella didn't drop her off and avoided my calls until late at night. I figured Stella was just being an overly attached grandma, and when I managed to talk to Kerry that night, she seemed okay, saying she missed her daddy and grandma. That's when I said I'd pick her up myself in the morning. But when I asked for the location, Stella dodged the questions. Another day passed, and then another day, and still no peep, no nothing. After 5 days of this, I had enough. I needed to get my daughter back. I activated the Apple AirTag I put in Kerry's bag and found out where she was. So I went to the house and banged on the door. Nobody answered, but I could hear Kerry crying inside, so what did I do? I decided to break the door down. When I got in, I saw Kerry dressed up in some poofy dress with tons of makeup, crying because she didn't like any of it. Her hair was in some big updo, and she looked very uncomfortable. But what shocked me even more was right by her side there was Vito and Stella, getting her ready for what I could only guess was a pageant. What the heck? I lost it. Absolutely lost it on them both, demanding to know what the heck they thought they were doing. Vito and Stella stumbled over their words, trying to explain that Vito was still drowning in debt and they needed money, so they signed Kerry up for a competition. Luckily, I was there before they could go through with their foolishness. I was beyond furious and decided to call the police. Stella and Vito begged me not to, but I wasn't having any of it. I started wiping off the makeup, yanking Kerry out of that ridiculous dress, and dismantling her painful-looking hairstyle. I told them they'd rot in jail because I'd exposed Vito's gambling, and I hoped the people he owed would come for them and deal with them accordingly. "Tammy, please listen to us. You know, Stella, when you came to me 5 days ago, I thought that you were being sincere. That's why I let you keep my daughter for 5 days. I thought that her trustworthy grandma would take care of her, as she promised. But clearly, I was wrong. I expected this type of crap from Vito, but you? This is a new low. You are both sick. I guess the apple didn't fall far from the tree." The police had arrived, and I had put my daughter in the car, telling her to lie down and try and rest. She was obviously relieved to see her mama come to save her, and I couldn't be happier that I came at the time I did. Who knows what could have happened if I had come later? When the police approached me, I explained to them that my ex-husband was violating the terms of our divorce. He wasn't supposed to see Kerry, and he was a known gambler and alcoholic, and I was scared for my daughter's safety. The police arrested Vito, but left Stella behind. I drove off, leaving Stella crying on the doorstep and Vito being pushed into a squad car. Good riddance.